Antonia, I imagine students are just getting this news as we are, but have you heard any reaction so far?
Well, Savannah, people woke up this morning and were ready for this. Students knew this was coming. In fact, they've been preparing for this moment for years. They knew from the earliest stages of this lawsuit that it was going to wind its way up to the Supreme Court, and that very likely this was going to be the result. It still feels like a gut punch. That's the kind of language I'm hearing from students that I've been talking to this morning, that they're devastated, they're distressed, not really for themselves, but more for the generations of students coming up behind them. For many of the minority students, not just black students, but for Latino students, Native American students, Native Hawaiian students who come from communities that have historically been very underrepresented at Harvard and schools like Harvard. They're particularly worried about kids like them trying to get access to these schools in the future. And they often point to California as an example that's fueling those anxieties. And that's because more than 2 decades ago, what we saw happen in California's UC system is that when they did away with affirmative action, minority enrollment in their elite public universities there fell by about 50%. Those were very devastating numbers for the minorities on campus there, for professors who were teaching courses and trying to support those students who continued to study the ramifications of all of that. And the university system there has tried different alternatives. They've tried to recruit students of color from different communities across California, create programs and pipelines. But what they've found is that they could never quite bring themselves back up to the level of diversity that they would like to see. And that's what they're concerned is going to happen here on this campus already this spring. So really just a couple weeks ago, when students around the country, around the world, found out their acceptances to Harvard, we already saw those numbers tick down a bit. So the numbers of black students admitted, Latino students, Native Hawaiian and Native American students went down by just a bit. And so there's concern here that that's only going to get worse now. For faculty, for administrators, they have also been planning sort of behind closed doors for this moment. And they're looking at alternatives. It's part of the reason why we see a lot of schools moving away right now from the SAT and ACT, from standardized tests. They believe that that's part of what has limited minority access, and perhaps removing that will be a roadblock that allows them to continue fostering diversity. There are a lot of conversations about legacy admissions and the way that potentially limiting that or doing away with it would allow them to make more space for diverse students. But the concern, again, is, how do you pick up the pieces? How do you look for different opportunities and windows that are going to be legal through this opinion? And I think that's going to take days, really months, for these schools to process. And certainly the vast majority of students are just worried that Harvard is going to look a bit more like it did many decades ago, when the school was much more explicitly barring access, not just to minorities, but also to women. And so, there's nerves right now about the campus that those students, those kids have come to love and celebrate, a school that has been very open about the fact that it cherishes diversity, it cherishes that kind of learning and that kind of access, and what they're going to do to maintain that culture going forward. There's a bit of a kind of a grieving right now, and what are we going to do now is the major question.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.